The countdown to 2020 is on. Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman is taking some time to chat with the men and women running for president. In the latest installment of Meet the Candidate, Rick sits down with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York. And one of the topics you guys touched on was gun violence.
Yeah, we were actually talking about corruption that comes from the lobbying industry, and she says, tell me a problem that we can't solve, and I will tell you the special interest that is in front of that problem, making sure we don't solve it. So she ticked off a few things. She said, gun violence. I said, well, that's the NRA, but the NRA has been struggling. Do you think that's having an effect on their effectiveness in Washington? And here's what she had to say about that.
Yes, I do, because what we've seen is these horrible incidents of gun violence over several years, mass shootings, and then shootings every day in inner cities that is beginning to wear on the American people. And the young people of America are rising up. The fact that you have kids marching out of classrooms, marching on Washington, marching for our lives, the fact that you have young women like Emma Gonzalez speaking up and calling BS on every member of Congress that has ever lied to her, that is changing outcomes, because even if they can't convince a legislator to do the right thing, they can convince their parents, and they can convince their grandparents and all the people that love them. And those people will start voting out people that won't be for common sense gun reform.
Is that getting to the point where it's influencing where some of your colleagues in Congress stand?
I do. I really believe
in actual votes?
I do.
So she seems to think that because the popular opinion is turning against the NRA a little bit, and they're having these internal squabbles and fighting and financial issues and stuff like that, that is actually weakening the power of the NRA in Washington. And her campaign is about taking on the lobbyists and passing some new laws to try to limit the power that lobbyists have. And she says, you know, all these laws that get rewritten in the middle of the night, that's because of the lobbyists, not because of the voters.
And she's also changed her tune on guns over the years.
Yeah, she went from,
she actually hurt her.
Well,
because she's evolved, I would say, with a lot of public opinion. However, she was not always saying what she's saying now on guns.
That's right. Well, she's from upstate New York, not from New York City, where guns are popular. And she used to have an A rating from the NRA. That's now an F rating, but she keeps getting reelected. So apparently it's not hurting her.
I mean, Rick, you follow kind of, I think, actual policy a little bit more closely than some of us here.
That's my job.
Who just you just kind of spout off. But when you look at where gun control sits right now, I mean, we're having a fierce immigration debate. Healthcare, we've got a key court ruling that could actually throw healthcare into chaos in not too long of a time. Where does the Second Amendment fit right now in terms of an issue that is actually moving the needle for politicians? I mean, in some states it might matter, but it does feel like it's really gone down in terms of importance that mainstream candidates are discussing on a kind of a consistent basis.
Well, when you look at the issues that are most important to voters, I don't think gun violence is in the top 5 among all voters. I think it is when you ask Democrats. So there is kind of a urban-rural divide on that question. I think there are a lot of big questions where there has just not been much movement in the United States in a long time. And it feels like we might be on the cusp of some actual movement. I think gun control is one of them. I mean, we have an appalling epidemic of gun violence compared with every other country in the world. And we've just done nothing about it, really. Some states and cities have, but nationally we haven't. I think healthcare is another one. We have been tolerating this problem of healthcare that's too expensive for too many people, and still 30 million people who don't have healthcare. We've been tolerating this. We did have the Affordable Care Act, but it feels like we're getting to a point where the conversation is shifting, and it's moving more in the direction of we need to do something. Of course, I think this all depends on who's in power in Washington, and that's what 2020 is going to be about.